Good morning. This is for my week 7 video discussion for Liberty University. As you can see behind me, it is a very sunny day here in northern Michigan, to which we are very happy, even though it is slightly on the cold side. This week, with looking through Project MUSE, oddly there were not a lot of journal articles. There were a couple of books listed. So in order to supplement, I did go back into the ProQuest historical newspaper database in order to verify some of the sentiments discussed in the books and within the journal articles that I found. In particular, the two books that were noted were Lone Star Stalag by Michael Waters and The Enemy Within Never Did Without, which is the German and Japanese prisoners of war at Camp Huntsville, 1942 to 1945, written by Jeffrey Littleton and Charles Ford. Both of these books essentially give an overview and summary of how the prisoners were treated at these two camps in Texas, one just outside of Huntsville and another one just outside of Hearne. Within these, there were sentiments among the American people. Americans thought that the German prisoners were, and in some cases Japanese prisoners, were given fair treatment, were given coddling, were given better rations, and these accusations actually made it into the newspaper. In particular, written in 1945 by Mary Spargo in the Washington Post, she entitled her article, "Prisoner Coddling Denied, U.S. to Stick to War Rules," indicating that there are numerous accusations regarding coddling, extra food, extra blankets, too much recreational time, but the U.S. planned on sticking to the Geneva Conventions and the rules of war. Now, bringing in Andrew Kramer's novel, Nazi Prisoners of War in America, he also brings in that idea of coddling, yet he further supplements that, indicating that the United States had to follow the Geneva Conventions, one, because they had signed it, but also two, the thought was if we treat our prisoners well, our American prisoners in Germany will be treated well. Interestingly, in Spargo's article, she does mention that the War Department was following a policy of no work, no eat. So the officers and the enlisted, particularly the enlisted, had to work as laborers in order to get their food. Following along with that is Barbara Heisler's article entitled "The Other Brincios, Temporary Labor and German Prisoners of War in the United States, 1943 to 1946. Here she looks at the labor and the idea of labor for German POWs, as well as the temporary or migrant workers that are seen in the United States, particularly in the southern United States, but that's also something that can be related up here in Michigan, because even up through today, we do have migrant workers that come up every spring and summer to work in the farms. So as we look at the labor market, these sources sitting together, Matthias Rees then looked at the idea of masculinity and the treatment of German prisoners of war in his article, "Bronze Bodies Behind Barbed Wire," simply indicating that the Americans didn't just see them as laborers, but also as more or less entities very similar to themselves. They saw them as prisoners very similar to American citizens. The ethnicity was the same, the ideas of masculinity were the same, and this is also indicated via a newspaper article published in The Sun by Philip Heisler, oddly enough. I wonder if he's related to Barbara, entitled "Nazi Prisoners in America Still Proud and Confident," whereas he went to Fort McLaren in Alabama in April and noticed that the men had full bellies, had decent clothing, still stood at attention, very much emulated that idea of masculinity and proudness of their country and themselves. Throughout all of this, though, tying this all together, it's clear that the United States did treat their prisoners well. They were well fed, despite accusations to the contrary of special coddling and special treatment, but they still retained an element of pride in their own culture and who they actually were. So despite being prisoners, they were still men. They didn't lose their humanity. They weren't treated as second class or as particular enemies, which is something very interesting, given that when someone thinks of a Nazi or someone thinks of a German soldier, particularly during World War II, they are seen as this evil individual. They have no humanity and they just want to kill everyone. That's the general stereotypical idea. But as you start getting into these articles and reading about these prisoner experiences, we see that they still retained their humanity. They were treated very well. And as I'm going to wrap up, I wish everyone a great week. It's hard to believe this class is over, almost over, and I will talk to you all later. Have a good day.